Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Revolving Loan Fund for Economic Development semi-annual training webinar. My name is Claire Carlson from WEC, and I will be the moderator for today's webinar. Before we get started, I'd just like to go over a few items so you know how to participate in today's event. Each of you should see a control panel on the right side of your screen. You can expand and collapse the panel by clicking on the orange arrow. And by default, you've joined the presentation listening using your computer's speaker system. If you prefer to join over the telephone, just select phone call in the audio pane of the control panel and the dial-in information will be displayed. All attendees have joined the webinar with their audio muted. You can submit questions to our presenter at any time using the questions pane of the control panel. Just simply type your question in and submit it. Our presenter will then answer your questions as soon as possible throughout the webinar. Please note that we will be emailing a PDF version of the PowerPoint presentation to all attendees following the webinar. And with that, I'd like to turn things over to today's presenter, Mark Staff, Grants Specialist.
Good afternoon. Hopefully the brief technical difficulties we were experiencing are now done and PowerPoint cooperates. Again, my name is Mark Staff. I'm a grant specialist here within the Bureau of Community Development. Joining me is my colleague Amanda Knock. Let's get started. Areas of discussion for today are the compliance report. Again, that'll be due November 15th. We won't be going in depth into that, but we'll talk about what needs to be submitted. Self-certification forms and marketing your RLF ED program. For the compliance report, again, please submit a report and supporting information by Wednesday, November 15th. We will be emailing you your spreadsheets to the email address you submitted on the last report, and that should happen early to middle next week. Please submit those to the DOA Decker Community Development at wisconsin.gov email address that you see. And anytime a document is submitted, please make sure that the UGLUG, which is an abbreviation for Unit of General Local Government, so please make sure that your UGLUG name is in the subject line of the email and in the document's name. So Brown County 33117 for the compliance report, or if you're submitting additional documentation, Brown County self-certs, whatever the document might be. We will not be doing in-depth training on how to fill out the report. Deb Wagner had done webinars, I think, for the previous 3 years, and there is a lot of those instructions that have currently been saved, and those webinars are available on our website. If you would like a refresher on that, please feel free to go to those webinars on our website, or you can contact me at the general email inbox listed, or my phone, or my own email as well. This should simply be a data entry exercise. I want to emphasize that you should be collecting the information that goes into the report throughout the year through your loan servicing, collecting the documentation, and then you should just be entering the information at this time. We don't anticipate that you would have to collect it then. It should just be a data entry exercise. Required documents to submit. The compliance report itself, any bank statements, money market statements, or other investment statements, general ledger covering period from 4/1/2017 through 9/30, the 9/30 balance sheet or general ledger that has the balance of each individual ED loan, documentation of administrative expenses. Not all of you may be claiming admin expenses, but if you do, we do need a specific breakdown with backup documentation for how those were expended. And then we'll be talking about this next point in detail, but employee self-certification forms for projects that have completed their performance period. And let's get into that next. So employee self-certification forms are a tool that we use to document and show HUD that the national objective of low to moderate income job creation has been met. The form has the employer applicant check a box of their wages, family wages based on their family size. And again, 51% or greater of the employees that are created should be low to moderate income. These forms can be found at our website at this link. And continue to use the 2017 forms until the 2018 forms are provided. HUD releases those numbers approximately in around March each year, and then we'll have to update those forms, update those numbers on our forms as well, and get those out to you. But continue to use 2017 forms into the beginning of 2018 until we notify you that the new forms are available. So here is a snapshot of the meat of the employee self-certification forms. We do want to emphasize that these forms need to be completed fully and correctly prior to submission to DOA. Please emphasize that the employees and or applicants read the instructions and follow them prior to submitting. Sometimes we see a number of checkboxes in the income ranges, in which case we do not know which checkbox to take. So just for a brief example, applicants or employees will go on the left side and circle their family size, and then only will check a single one of the A, B, C, or D columns in the same row as their family size. These forms ask people to identify their race or ethnicity, as well as some background questions about unemployment or female head of household. These are done because HUD requests this information and we enter it into our federal reporting system to them. You know, they present this information to Congress about what the dollars have accomplished, and that in theory helps keep the funding coming each year. So if you get a self-certification form submitted to you that does not have that information or not have all the check boxes done or name and signature, please send that back and have them correct it or fill out a new one. Please note that there is a backside to this page, and in this particular section we ask the employer to fill out details on the employee. Specifically, we see some errors that if part-time is selected, the information for what full-time equivalency they are working is not completed. What we need in there is a 0.5, 50%, 20 hours, whatever fraction of full-time that individual is working, we need that to be included on here. And that is how you will verify that the national objective of no more than $35,000 a job has been met. Without that information, we don't know if one part-time person is working 30 hours or 10 hours and can't total it up for the full-time equivalency needed to complete that test. So we are making one change going forward, in that we are not asking you to submit the self-certification forms, and then we will get into the new self-certification summary form until your projects complete their job creation period. So when you make a loan and you have a contract with a business, you should have information stating that X number of jobs need to be created in this period of time, and then at the end of that period of time, that is only when we ask you to submit the self-certifications along with the summary form, which we will go over. Your loans may have the same or a different repayment period, and that is fine. We are looking for this information at the end of the date that is specified in your contract that says when the job creation needs to be completed. You can still work with your businesses if they need to request amendments. That is a local decision, and then if an amendment is made, please follow the your manuals on how you agreed to go about that. But once that amendment is made, then whatever the new completion date, that is when you would submit that to DOA. We would like you to collect a payroll from the business to verify the employment at the end of the performance period. If a business is contracted to create 10 jobs, and they start with 10 jobs, you will need a payroll to show that they are at 20 jobs or more at the end of the performance period. Additionally, frequently these jobs are high turnover, and so you may have self-certification forms from individuals who are no longer employed at the business. We ask that you would keep those forms, but keep them at a different part of the file, and do not submit any self-certification forms for individuals who are no longer employed. Simply verify the payroll and the names on the self-certification forms, summarize those in the self-certification summary form that we'll go over, and then submit that to DOA. You do not have to submit the payroll. Please keep that in your local file, and that will be reviewed during a monitoring. So again, we ask that the status of the LMI, the race, the ethnicity data, all that be summarized on a form that we will go over now. So this is what the self-certification summary form looks like. This is a form that we have created and use in our economic development and public facilities for economic development. So I will point to the red circle on the screen. While this does have sections for semi-annual report, for the RLF program, we only ask you to submit the final summary report. So again, when that job creation period has ended, include the project start date and the project end date, the baseline number of jobs. Again, if they started with 10 and we're supposed to create 10 more to get to 20, you would have the 10 in the baseline job number. The total jobs created would be 10 or more to reach 20 or above, and then the total workforce. And then for those self-certification, for those individuals that are still employed at the end of the job creation period, you will total up for each category under race, ethnicity, and then the job classifications that were on the back of the self-certification. Any questions so far?
I don't know if you...
So we have a question: what is the best way to update the email addresses that the report should be sent to? If that email has changed, please email us at the general inbox that you have listed, or myself, Mark's staff. After this is completed, we will be sending out contact information. It's real simple. My email is mark.staff@wisconsin.gov, but again, we will send that out to you. If anything changes and we should send it to somebody new, please provide us that info. If you have any questions on any of the forms as we go, again, please submit those, and we'll also have time at the end to address additional questions. Moving on to the how do we obtain the new self-cert forms? Good question. These will be posted online. We can also send these out with your the reports that will be sent out at the beginning of next week, but they will be on our website. And maybe currently, I believe they are on our website right now. Do only new employees fill out these forms? So yes, generally the projects we see are job creation projects. And so any of the existing employees, so again, when we talked about the baseline number, you know, if the business has 10 employees and needs to create an additional 10, the 10 employees who are there and are just part of the baseline do not need to fill out this form. New employees that come in and are hired to show that the job number has increased from 10 to 20 need to fill out this form. And again, throughout the job creation period, people who have filled out the form at the beginning may not be there. So if, as that hiring and that process goes on throughout that 2, 3, however many number of years that your contract states, you continue have to collect those, and then at the end with the payroll, you'll be able to sort who's still there and who's not here and know what to submit. So the business will have to have the employees complete the self-certs as they are hired. The question was, the self-certs are only one time at the end of the performance period, not every time. That is correct. When the reports were submitted to us over time, we wouldn't know if the project was completed. We wouldn't know if the employee would still be there when the job creation period ended. So yes, we were asking that you only submit to DOA at the end of your RLF loan's job creation period. You as an RLF administrator may want to, and we would encourage you to still collect these throughout the process to keep track on how the job creation is going. Again, to make sure that the forms are filled out completely, so if there are errors, you can go back and have them make any corrections at that time. That will be much more difficult to do at the end of the period if years have gone by and there are things that need to be done. So we still would like you to work with the business to make sure this process is being completed successfully throughout the project. But in terms of when we will get these forms at DOA, you'll only submit those to us when the job creation period ends. All right, so let's go to the back side of the form. So again, we ask if the positions have been provided healthcare, have they been posted, are people previously unemployed? Again, these are questions that are on the self-cert forms that you'll just update. And then, like you saw, there's 4 columns, A, B, C, and D on the form. HUD, besides the is it 51% or greater LMI, wants more detailed information. They want to know low, very low, low, and moderate. Only D on those self-certification forms is non-LMI, so just total up from each column as well, and then sign and submit. Looks like we have another question come in. So if you start with 10 and lose 5, would you need to add 15 jobs to get up to the 20 total? Yes, you need to have a baseline set in your contract. How do you know how many jobs they created if you don't know how many they started? So at the time of the loan, you will need to verify how many employees are currently there. If it's a startup, then maybe 0. That's easy. Otherwise, you need to get that information from the business. It may be 5, it may be 10. But in order to show that the job creation was met, you need to have that number at the beginning of the job creation period and at the end. So again, if you start with 10 and you need to create 10 more, then the total workforce at the end of the job creation periods need to be 20. And then you would only have to certify those people that came in after the job creation period started, not existing employees. So we only send in the summary form. No, we would like you to send in the self-certifications as well, but only the self-certifications for the individuals that are there at the end of the performance period. Through that time, you will be collecting additional forms. You will have some forms from people who have left during that period. Keep those in your local files, but you will be submitting to us the self-certification summary form, as well as the self-certifications for the individuals who are still employed at the end of the period. We do not need the payroll, and we do not need the self-certification forms for people who have left. Those can be kept in your local files. So the question is, so for future loans, we should be asking for a payroll at the start of the loan. That could work. You do not necessarily need a payroll at the beginning, but you do need some documentation, whether it's a signed letter from the business to verify how many they start with. Again, for the example, if you don't know where they are at the beginning, it's difficult in order to, when somebody's looking in the file who may not be familiar with the project, to determine how many they created to get to the number at the end. Who determines how many jobs per loan? Does the amount dictate this? So the federal rules and regs say that no more than $35,000 per job can be loaned to a business. We at the state are cautious about going up to that amount. Again, if a business tells you they're going to create 5 jobs at $35,000 a job and you give them that full amount, if they create 4 out of the 5 instead of the full amount, then they did not meet a national objective, and HUD considers that to be a failed project. That does not mean you can't. If you do, we encourage you to be very comfortable with the job creation goals that they're conservative, the business is offering. We encourage you to do a very strong underwriting and to make sure your collateral is strong and in place. But under federal rules and regulations, you can loan up to $35,000 per job. This information should be laid out in clear detail in the contract. The contract should say, we are making a loan for $100,000 for, let's say, 5 jobs, and then go on to say the jobs need to be created by X date. Your promissory note will have the repayment period that could, in theory, be the same date, but oftentimes is different. So you just need to make these details clear in the contract so that the business and the RLF can work together to meet these goals and submit those required documents to us at the end of the period, because HUD does look at these projects and we want to be able to have that clear documentation in the file so we can show them that the national objectives were met. Just reading a question here. The question is, we have a project performance period ending at 12/31/17 at the end of this year. Do we need to resubmit the self-cert we already submitted? Also, if a business is no longer open but is still paying on a loan, how do we submit the employee summary? Good question. So for the project ending at the end of this year, we would like a summary form and resubmit the self-certifications for the employees that are still there. The problem with the way it was done in the past, when you would submit self-certifications forms to us, we wouldn't know if that employee was still employed there at the end. So we wouldn't know what information to put, whether they're very low LMI or non-LMI, or what the race ethnicity is. So yes, going forward, if you have open projects, please get the payroll from the business at the end of the period, verify which self-certification forms you collected are still there, and then submit those in the self-certification summary form together. If you have a business that is no longer in their job creation period but still paying on their loan, we are going to do this process with the self-certification summary form for any project that is still within the job creation period. So as of now, you do not need to go back to previous projects and try to collect that and have that summary form filled out. Any other questions on this form before we move on? Then again, if you have specific questions related to any of your projects and you don't want to ask them here in a general setting, you can contact me or the general inbox and we can discuss that at a later time. Moving on to the next slide. Marketing the RLF ED program. So before we get into details of the marketing, and if you'll recall, these are actually the same slides as last year. Want to talk about big picture for the RLF program as a whole. The RLFs and the money that are within them are federal funds. They are not local dollars. And we've seen some challenges throughout the year and in past years, and we really want to emphasize that there needs to be capacity at the local level to administer the program. And we know there's been a lot of turnover for who manages your program at the local level. And obviously the reason I'm talking to you now is we've had turnover here as well. Deb Wagner has taken a different position, so I am now the RLF administrator at the state level. But we want to really encourage and emphasize that, if someone leaves at a local level, there needs to be a transfer of knowledge. There needs to be that work to train up the individual who's going to be doing that new job, just like they would at any other position that you're hiring. There are approximately 140 RLFs throughout the state. I took over for Deb, and I still had my other workload. We simply do not have the staff capacity here to work in depth and do in-depth training for all 140 RLFs. That being said, we are here to help. If you have questions, please ask. We are the oversight body, and our goal here is to make sure that you follow all the HUD rules and regs. If you have specific questions, I probably will refer you to your manual. So the question of, well, how many dollars per job can we or should we loan to a particular business? My answer generally is, well, the federal rules and regs are $35,000 a job. It is up for you at the local level to decide what incentives you want to be at. So if your manual currently says we only loan up to $10,000 a job, and you want to change that to be more flexible, you can make updates to your manual. We require that you submit those to us, and we just look again to make sure that what your manual states falls within the federal guidelines, but a lot of these decisions are up to a local level, and that's where that capacity to manage the program comes in. It's really important. Unfortunately, some of the questions that we've had, and I know generally because it's the turnover, give a little pause to whether there is or isn't that capacity at the local level to manage the program. And if there hasn't been that transfer of knowledge, we do want to make you aware that HUD and COSGA, which is the Consortium of State Community Development Agencies, offers trainings. Our staff goes to these trainings. You can use admin dollars to send your local staff, whether you have a number of people working on your RLF program or it's just an individual. Your admin dollars can go to pay for training. If there is enough interest, and if you guys let us know, we can work with consultants and people who provide training to set up a training opportunity here within the state. Some of the HUD and COSGA trainings are throughout the country, and while it is expensive to bring an individual here, if there is significant interest, we can kind of split the cost over a number of people and provide that. We do have a question. I've been asked by a local community if they can change their interest rate. My thought was this would require a procedural manual change would need state approval. Is this correct, or they can do it internally? Yeah, so if the manual that they are currently working on states that their interest rate is a fixed and doesn't have a range where they can be flexible, and they would like to change that, they are allowed to. Again, that just needs to be submitted to us. For something like that, it's not within federal requirements of what percentage they need to choose from, so it would, in theory, automatically be, air quotes, approved. But if you do make changes to your manuals, yes, we do want that submitted to the state. Going back, the big push with capacity at the local level in these trainings is we really want, and HUD really wants, these funds to be expended. We really want loans to be made. Right now, we are only encouraging you to make that, but I will let you all know that HUD is looking more closely at the RLFs, and we anticipate guidance in the somewhat near future, and our encouragement to expend the funds may change to a requirement that if you do not expend funds, you need to pay that money back to the state. Again, we have not had that guidance yet. Based on conversations and what we've heard, we think that may be coming. That being said, we are not encouraging you to make risky loans. If you do not feel you have a capacity at the local level, or somebody leaves and that capacity 6 months from now goes away, you can return your program funds to the state, and you will not lose access to CDBG capital. While you would not have your own RLF pocket of money managed by the state that would go into a general fund, you would still be eligible to apply under our program rules and regs and our underwriting for funds. And again, with HUD's oversight and the push to expend the funds, we know there's a challenge at a lot of the smaller communities especially, and so we would like you to take a serious look at that, if you haven't made a loan for a while and you're having challenges. So with that being said, let's go into marketing your program, because these are ways that you can identify projects and possibly get some money out the door. Please contact your local lenders. These are individuals that are working with local businesses. CDBG funds are generally used as gap financing. And so if your lenders already know which businesses are looking for lending and maybe can bridge a gap between project costs and what private financing can provide, there's an opportunity to expend your funds. Outreach to businesses directly. If you contact the businesses, we see that many times businesses aren't aware of CDBG funds as a funding source. So contacting them directly and making them aware of your program could lead to more loans and more projects. Educate your local elected officials. They are the ones that often have communication with many different groups and individuals throughout your communities. If they are educated on the rules and regs and the opportunity for CDBG capital to be used in your community, there's again an increased likelihood that projects can be identified and loans can be made. And discussions with county or regional organizations. We had a project that we funded here at the state level not too long ago where a business was looking to expand. Their current location within the business park that they were in was full, and they needed to go to a different community. By identifying or being in communication with your county or regional organizations, maybe you can promote your own area and use CDBG dollars to help that company expand in your own community. Utilization. So I kind of went over this. If you're not actively making loans, please consider giving it back to the state of Wisconsin. We have funds available here. If you gave it back, and again, we're worried about not having access in case that next big project comes up, our current ED loan program mixed loans up to $1 million. Again, at the we generally are in the $20,000 a job range, depending on the specifics, and we have those funds available. It would eliminate semi-annual reporting requirements and webinar attendance requirements. And any future CDBG ED funds could recapitalize an RLF ED in your community, if you decided you wanted to have that back, or if you had someone to manage that with the capacity to do so at future time. We are in the process of switching what was just a community development block grant for public facilities implementation handbook into a whole CDBG implementation handbook with all the programs: public facilities, planning, public facilities for economic development, and economic development. So if you have specific questions, if you're looking to possibly do a construction project that would trigger Davis-Bacon, our chapter on Davis-Bacon is in there. Environmental is required to be done on all of your projects. How to do that and work with our environmental consultant, Doug Bretthauer, that information is in there. So please go to the link if you need to go look things up. You can also contact us and we can provide you the information or talk you through it. We do have a question. If we look to do a marketing program for the RLF to local bankers, can we utilize the RLF administration funds for the cost of the program? Yes, that would be an eligible expense. Whether it's a brochure or an event, or even salary, man hours for going out and speaking to those are eligible expenditures. And so marketing the program, you would be able to use your admin dollars to cover that. Yes. Below is the path to previous PowerPoint slides. If you wanted to look up or had questions on some of Deb's presentations over the past couple of years, covering different topics than we covered today, covering specifically how to fill out certain tabs on your semi-annual report, they are included here. And again, we will be sending out this webinar, these slides, and posting actually the audio from this on our website. The slides should go out later this afternoon, and we hope to get the webinar up shortly. Another question coming in. With regards to working capital loans that are done during the reporting period, if the full loan does not get utilized during the period, for example, a $70,000 loan, only $50,000 is utilized in the period, do we report this as a $70,000 loan or a $50,000 loan? So I think you're saying you made an award to them for $70,000, but they only provided you with documentation, you only dispersed 50. If that is the case, I guess if they still have the opportunity to get the remaining 20, keep it as a $70,000 loan. If the opportunity has expired and they are only eligible to keep 50, then change it, amend the reporting down to the 50 timeline. We are at the end of the slideshow. If you have any questions, please submit them now. I will answer them. Would you be able to email a PowerPoint? Yes, that should happen shortly after this is done. You should be able to have that in your email inbox this afternoon. If job creation is not met, we currently have a penalty fee. What do you suggest? That is going to be a local decision. In the past, we currently don't have a penalty now. We would just require repayment to the state out of an RLF loan. If we made a state, if the repayments from the business would no longer stay with the local RLF, they would come back to us if the job creation requirements would not be met. If you would like to have your own program have a penalty, that is perfectly allowable. If you are maybe see that as a barrier to making additional loans and you're getting pushback from the local business community and you're trying to, I guess, increase incentives to use the program, you could amend your manual to get rid of it entirely. You could amend your manual to, based on the underwriting or the risk of the loan, leave it as an option in your manual. So on a case-by-case basis, you could do it. That is up to you at a local level. Yes, and so Amanda pointed out that, and again, these projects still need to meet a national objective, and so that's where, what number per job you loan at the beginning comes in. When the program came here to DOA, we were coming out of a recession, and many of the job goals we had saw in or job creation goals that we saw in the contracts that were made were often much higher than what was accomplished, and so we've become more conservative in the dollar per job figures, and maybe more conservative, in the case where if a business comes to you and says, we think we'll be able to create 10 jobs, you do not have to contract for those 10. Well, you can say, well, maybe we'll do 5 jobs at $20,000 and be conservative. Again, having that flexibility in your manual might be beneficial to you. Penalty fees are allowed and are okay if you're trying to collect. In the case of a penalty fee that may be a little punitive depending on how much it is, but again, it's been done, it's allowed. We've done it here at the state before, even though we currently do not have penalties now. Any other questions? We will hang around here for quite a few minutes in case additional questions come in. Otherwise, thank you all for attending, despite it being mandatory. We appreciate your attendance. You are welcome to sign off, and again, we'll try to get out those report forms for you to fill out the beginning and middle of next week. You should receive the slides later this afternoon. We will also be typing out responses to the questions that are submitted and hopefully get those out to you next week as well. So if you don't have any more questions, feel free to sign off. Like we said, we'll hang out here for a while, and thanks again. We did have an additional question about who is required to attend. Some groups administer, individuals administer, several municipalities, RLFs. If you are a representative for them and can record that in some form or fashion to us and let us know, we only require one representative per RLF, and if you are one representative for many RLFs, that is okay as well. So they are certainly welcome to attend, but would not be required to. But again, please notify us, and I think you have in this particular case for who you are representing. It doesn't appear that we have any more questions. We are going to be signing off. Again, if you have additional questions, please reach out to us either in my email directly, mark.staff@wisconsin.gov, or at the General Bureau inbox. Thank you.